Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our fabulous talk today. My name is Carrie Ryan, and I'm the lead curator for learning at M+. And I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. The talk will be conducted in English, so please do make sure to grab a headset so you can listen in your preferred language, either Cantonese or Mandarin. We will have a brief Q&A at the end of the discussion. We'll be doing this online, so you can use the QR code that we're showing on the screen, and you can access the question and answer platform. And we'll go through as many questions as we can, time allowed. So while the conversation is ongoing, feel free to think about the questions and enter them while they're fresh in your mind. I'm also going to ask you not to take any photos during today's talk, but we will have a chance at the end for everyone to take a photograph. So we'll make sure you can do that today. And really what I do want to say is that I'm really thrilled that you're here to join us today for the Lars Nittve Keynote lecture series. This series is named after M+'s inaugural director, Dr. Lars Nittve, and invites renowned artists, scholars, and thinkers to share their insights on their practices and reflections on visual culture and society. The lecture series is generously sponsored by the Robert H. and Ho Family Foundation in Hong Kong, and we are eternally grateful for them for their support for this program. I'd also like to thank our M+ patrons and members whose support enables us to continue to develop and offer rich and diverse public programming here at M+. So we are thrilled today to present the lecture in the form of a conversation between pioneering actor Joan Chen and film critic Maggie Lee. So I want to give you a bit of context to this talk because I think it'll help you get into the conversation they're going to have. So the inspiration to invite Ms. Chen actually came from another pioneer, Madame Song, the subject of our current exhibition, Madame Song, Pioneering Art and Fashion. The exhibition examines how Song Huaikui's impact on the creative scene in China and impacts abroad. The exhibition also reveals her influence on China's transformation into the cosmopolitan and culturally diverse society that it is today. And the Madame Song exhibition is also a dialogue with a special thematic screening program called Once Upon a Time in Beijing, held at M+ Cinema. And we featured films such as Bernardo Bertolucci's The Last Emperor and Ning Ying's For Fun. The screenings highlight the importance of Beijing, not only as a space for cinematic imagination, but also as a prism for reflecting the transitioning Chinese society and presented how it's shown on screen and in the world. So, as you'll hear in the conversation today, Madame Song and Joan Chen did cross paths on the set of The Last Emperor. So what we wanted to do is look how Joan Chen's career continued after this moment in time that she was connected with Madame Song. And much like Song Huaikui, Chen has played the role of cultural ambassador, acting and directing across China and the US, inspiring audiences and actors and cultivating the next generation of creative professionals around the world. So I'm really excited for you to hear today's conversation. And while we cannot cover all the remarkable and impactful moments Joan Chen's career has had over the last few decades, I know that you'll be treated to a really wonderful conversation. So I'm going to briefly introduce our guests, and they'll come out, and they're really who you're here to hear from today. So just give me 1 minute. And first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Maggie Lee. Maggie was the Asia Chief Critic for Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. She has been the artistic director and curator for film festivals, national museums, and arts organizations in Japan, Canada, and Europe. She mentors directors at script and creative development labs around Asia, and she's embarking on a new path as a scriptwriter. Finally, Joan Chen began her film career at the age of 14. Her performance in Little Flower won her Best Actress Award and catapulted her to fame in China. Chen moved to the United States in 1981 and has since appeared in over 80 films and television shows, including Bernardo Bertolucci's The Last Emperor. Chen made her directorial debut in 1997. She has served as a juror at a number of international film festivals around the world. She was president of the jury at Golden Horse Awards in 2014 and president of the jury at First Film Festival in 2023. Please join me in welcoming Maggie Lee and Joan Chen to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this really rare and important event. And we're just so honored and happy to have Joan with us. So, Joan, please say some words to our audience.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. And today is Yuan Xiaojie, so I wish you all the happiness in the world. Have a great Yuan Xiaojie, and let's have a communication.
So, let's start the talk, because then you can all have a chance also to ask questions later. So, I wanted to know, let's start with talking about The Last Emperor. And apart from winning like 9 Oscars, it's really made history in so many ways as well. But tell us what it was like for you to star in the film.
I think that was the film that instilled in me the love of filmmaking. I did a few movies before that, but The Last Emperor, with its world-renowned in every department heads, were at the time the best in the world. And just to witness them to work and to see Bernardo working, it sort of gave me that romantic version of filmmaking. It makes me feel that this is a very romantic journey to be on. I remember arriving on the set and immediately realized that was different from any films that I had made. The scale of it. And I remember Storaro, the DP, adjusting light. That was the first day I arrived. And he was talking very gently into a walkie-talkie, never raised his voice, and he just observed and he talked very gently, and the lights became perfect. And Bernardo was always behind the lens. Bernardo was very specific about the framing, about the movement of the camera. When I arrived, he was sitting on the crane behind the camera, going with the speed and just adjusting it. And then the ADs and the department heads using so many different languages, and it all come out synchronized with that shot. I remember when I arrived, they were filming the mother of Puyi having to say goodbye to Puyi, and a tracking shot of her walking erect, holding the baby. It was a moment of perfection. And later on, I learned that how Bernardo found the mother was because we stayed in Beijing Hotel, and she was a cleaning girl. And it reminded me, back then, really at meat market or a cigarette store, you could see beautiful people, and now all the beautiful people are packaged and shoved into show business, and you could no longer see them like in everyday lives anymore. But that was my first impression.
Yeah, that's amazing. Only you would have had those kind of stories to tell. So your acting debuts actually started a lot earlier. You were only 15. So tell us how your career in acting began.
It was all really quite an accident. I never thought I would be an actress, never in my wildest dreams. Growing up, I always wanted to be in a uniform. Think of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force as being the the ultimate career. Just when I was about 14, a casting director came into our school to as a scouting. Wu Zhennian is her name, from Shanghai Film Studio, and I was picked. And then she said, "Well, come to the studio so the others could see you too." And I went home and told my parents, and we discussed it, how I should present myself. It's an opportunity, because if I could leave high school, then I wouldn't be assigned to the countryside far away. At that time, students were being sent down to remote areas. We were debating, and I had two outfits, and a hard time deciding which one to wear. And finally, I went with an army style clothes. And then about 6, 7 maybe directors or casting directors in the office, and they said, "Well, show us something." I'm like, "I don't have anything." I was not like in the performing troupe or singing, dancing. I was in a rifle team. I was to be trained as a rifle athlete, and I had nothing I could show. So I said, back then we could all recite Mao's very long article called "Serve the People." I was listening to the broadcast that back then they just started teaching English in the radio, and I was learning how to recite "Serve the People" in English. So I said, I could recite in English, "Serve the People," and that's how I got casted. God knows why. None of them understood a word of English.
But you were perfect in reciting it.
I had no idea. I just recited the whole thing, and the next thing I know, I was cast in a movie called Jinggangshan, which was one of the trilogy of Long March that Mao's wife was producing. And so we were in pre-production, learning our lines, rehearsal, and finally the Gang of Four got toppled and the film got canceled. Yeah, so my actual first film was called Youth, and I was 15 when I did that.
Wow, that's quite a casting experience. As you can see from these photos, these are one of the masters of filmmaking in the world, like Bernardo Bertolucci, David Lynch, Oliver Stone, and our own director of photography, Chris Doyle. So you've worked with all of them more than once. So what was your experience or your insights from working with them?
With so many of them,
from you want to talk about?
from so long ago. Obviously, I talked about Bernardo Bertolucci. I could go on and on, because that was the longest filmmaking that I was on. I think the film took about 8 months altogether to make, but there were the childhood part that my character wasn't a part of, and then there was also Puyi in jail that I was not a part of, but I was with them for half a year, so I had more observation and connection with Bertolucci than other directors. He was a really well-read. The first time we met, that was in Los Angeles in Chateau Marmont. And he was at that time completely in love with Chinese culture. And I remember him talking to me about Lu Xun, about Lao Tzu, about these works as a Chinese, I actually didn't read, and I just very impressive, and also such a poet. I think from Bertolucci, I learned about film being a poetry. It is a poetry. Going back to The Last Emperor, you know, from every detail, for instance, the set where Lisa Lu, the Empress Dowager, died, and then Puyi became the emperor. That set was built in Beijing Film Studio, and how, like, in every red column, there were these dragons like circling around it. But in reality, in Gugong, there weren't any of them. And then I was thinking, that's interesting. Why is that? And when the film actually came out, because that was the scene that sort of determined the tone of the film, and it was ingenious. It gave you a sense of a myth, a faraway culture, actually a fairy tale. It's almost like a fable. And toward the end of the film, Puyi came back to the Forbidden City, which was a tourist site. And he sat there, and the little custodian's son said, "Well, you're not supposed to be here. You should go." And he said, "I used to live here." And the boy said, "Well, prove it." And he took out the cricket that he used to play, and he opened it up, and the cricket climbed out after half a century. And no audience questioned, "Oh, that's unbelievable." No one, because it's set up in a way that is a myth, that is a fairy tale. That is a fairy tale. It's a boy who became emperor, who became man. Bernardo's sort of romantic notion of the Chinese culture, first time when we met, he mentioned about 人之初性本善. So, Puyi, in the end, became the man that he was meant to be. It's a fairy tale. And that was, for me, I wasn't very aware at that age. We met when I was 25, but I was a naive 25. And I just never really paid attention. But even without really paying attention, I noticed all of that. That was how impressive he was. So that was the director that really changed my career. It was an accident that I got into this field, but after Last Emperor, I loved filmmaking. Yeah, it became a vocation. I see David Lynch here. I think from David Lynch, I really learned to be more spontaneous, that he took everything on the set and he could just take it and go, and when he saw the prop guy hiding behind a big case because he didn't want to be in the shot because they're filming already, and when he saw that, I said, "Oh, okay, that's the villain." Because back when he was doing the pilot, he didn't know who the killer was, and so it's very, very spontaneous. And I think Bernardo was in a way too. Bernardo said something that was very interesting, is that on the set you always leave a door open, because on stage you close like 2 layers of thick doors to keep the sound in there, and it was a symbolic door that you always keep open, and you never know what inspiration, what fairy might float in. And these are my biggest learning from these directors. Yeah.
And then you went on to direct 4 features yourself. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah. I don't think I'm a great director, but anyways, I do loved every moment of it. The first time I directed, it was because a friend of mine told me a story actually first, and I felt it would be a great novella to write, and then she wrote it. And then she showed me again, and I said, I want to make this into a film. And there is no character in there for me to play. But I said, it was a story of my generation. It was, to me, a very important story. Because I had no character I could play, I said, I want to adapt and direct it. And she didn't think that would, it's just my desire, that wouldn't happen. Then I went to judge for the Berlin Film Festival. When I went, it was right before the turn of the millennium. There was a lot of very pessimistic, but to me, a little bit pointlessly pessimistic films in the competition. And at the same time, I also saw films that are not in the competition, the short films that the young directors made, and I felt more inspired. And so on my flight back from Berlin to San Francisco, I started adapting like crazy for 12 hours. I sort of wrote a very rough draft and I gave it to the author. And she said, "Oh, you really mean it?" I said, "I really do. I mean it." And from that moment on, it was unstoppable. It was so difficult because there was no way I could get any finance from the US. And also, it's not a topic that I could get finance from China. But there was never one moment that I expected failure, and just went ahead and did it. It was a great learning experience. It was learning all the way through.
Well, and what about your other features? Like you worked with Richard Gere, Winona Ryder as well,
Yeah, it's a lot of the things I think happen in life. I saw my friend Ruby coming in. Anyway, Ruby taught me all about post-production, actually. When I did show, she was editing. I grew up on the set, so when I was 14 when I first entered Shanghai Film Studio, and then I did films. So the set itself is not intimidating to me. It's actually my comfort zone. I like it there. But post-production is something I never participated because as an actor, you just leave after. And that was, the post-production was really, you have to learn from scratch. It was actually difficult and very interesting. Autumn in New York, how it came about was I only learned much, much later what the reality was. I was approached by the producers because they saw Shosho, and the Shosho was my first film, was well reviewed, and so they approached me. And obviously, to me, it was a great opportunity. But later on, much, much later, I learned that they lost the director, and somehow the director and movie star did not see things eye to eye. And so that was the autumn that Richard Gere had time, was allotted to this film. And so when they lost the director, when the director and Richard Gere really didn't mesh well, they urgently need to find a director. And it wasn't the strongest script, and not many directors would just take over something like that. I did not know about that. And then the directors were talking, the producers were talking, and they said, oh, Joan, Chen. And when my name was mentioned, they started guffawing. They were just like laughing. Are we really that desperate that we're gonna find a Chinese movie star to direct our film? But they were that desperate. So they came to me. They came to me, and I did not know all of that. I just thought, oh, yeah, they appreciated my talent. But it was already late spring, early summer, and they asked me to start right away, but I was acting for another film, so we delayed a little bit more. So I had no chance to really participate in the revision of the script. And so the prep time is really, really short, but I was still exhilarated. I thought, what a great opportunity. I learned from it, though, that you don't get to choose your crew, you don't get to choose your actor, you don't get to do the script the way you want to do. It's a little difficult, but it was a great experience, nevertheless. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed the film a lot, actually. So, and then you also worked with a lot of Asian masters like Ang Lee and Jiang Wen, and as well as many directors from a newer generation. So, what was your experience working with them?
An, I don't have to talk about An. He's just a fantastic, such a good director, so meticulous. I remember during the time, I wasn't there a long time, but during the time I was there, we were always having lunch together. Never for one moment did he chit-chat. It's always completely focused on the next shot, the work, the scene. Not like even during lunch, there was not a moment of chit chat. How I came to work for An, I met An when he was just graduated from NYU, and trying to do a wedding banquet. At that time, there was a script, and he wanted me to play in the film. But eventually, after years of trying to get money, eventually then the studio in Taiwan gave him the money, and then they had to use a Taiwan actress. And so we've been in contact now and then around that time, but it was decades later that we ran into each other in an elevator in Shanghai, and he looked at me and he said, oh, I have a part for you. I said, what? And so waited after decades, and then there is the last caution that finally get to work with An. Jiang Wen, I also knew him when he was very young, right out of college. Also waited for another 20-some years to playing his film. I think he's a genius. The first time I was in contact with this film, 太阳照常升起, was I was invited to I would visit his office, his workshop when I went to Beijing, I was there, and he said, I want you to listen to a script. That was the first time I said, what? You want me to listen to a script? It's a story. And then in his screening room, the curtains are drawn, and on this big sofa, sitting there, and he was sitting on another big sofa, and he started talking, almost like a dream. He talked about one scene after another. It's all dreamscape. And that's how I first got in contact with the project. And then a year or two later, my manager said, well, Joan is ready to film, so, he wants you to be in the film. And I had no idea what character. I didn't remember any character when I listened to the script that would be suitable for me. But I said, oh, of course, I would be there. The day before I flew out from San Francisco, I got a few pages of the script. And it says, well, this is a movie that's in 4 parts, and you're in part 2. And so it's a tiny little, pages. And I read, I said, what? And he said, this character, it's you or no one else. Okay, in Chinese, 非你莫属, okay. And I was looking at this part, I said, this is ridiculous. I'm not like that at all. It's this is like in Chinese would be 花痴, like, what? But then we arrived, and from that I learned that we are opaque to ourselves. That oftentimes our motives, ourselves, either we deliberately hide from ourselves or we simply don't see ourselves sometimes. We don't see ourselves the way that you are actually looking at me and seeing me. I probably see myself entirely different from how you're seeing me. And so he saw something in me that I don't allow myself to be, but he sees it. It's interesting that way. And later on, he's like, oh yeah, in real life, you're always 装正经, okay? It's like, pretend to be a very serious, proper person all the time. And so that we are really opaque to ourselves. And you are lucky if an observant director who sees something in you that you can actually explore and so enjoy to explore. If he didn't see it, that part or that side of me would be sealed, going into the grave with me.
Yeah, and actually you were nominated and won many awards for that film, and it's really a magical film. So actually, as you were talking about how you find a director and he sees something in you and helps you bring out that side of yourself. So what is your creative process when you're performing?
Well, I think throughout the years, things change. I think in my younger years, I was not as aware. It was all sort of just instincts. I mean, of course, you would have to memorize your lines, and wasn't as meticulous, wasn't as thoughtful as if I were doing a part today. But I did remember in my younger days, at one point I fell in love with reading. And I thought that would be a very important part of being an actor, because your experience is always limited. And through literature, you expand the possibilities. I remember when I went to the U.S. and I discovered Stefan Zweig, who was such an expert at writing about the inner process of an emotion, very much in detail, stage by stage, and I thought that was a very helpful thing for me to find atypical responses. And you should, find not something that people has been taking for granted, that something that is somewhat atypical, and therefore refreshing and new. First of all, obviously, you memorize your lines. That is the most important part. And you get up in the morning and be on time to the makeup chair. The rest, I think it's interesting how a film is like this and a character is also like this. After a couple of days, there is always the first or second days you are nervous, you aren't sure, you're very uncertain. But the energy of the uncertainty, that's the momentum. And once after these 2 days, it'll take on its own life. It's just like a film. After you have directed 2 weeks, then it starts to have its own life. It'll grow into something that is better than you, that is more intelligent than you, that is something you haven't planned. And that's the wisdom of the character itself, that you can rely on.
That's amazing. And are there, I know you have a new film coming up called DD, so maybe you could tell us about that, as well as any other roles you recently did that you really enjoyed.
Well, I haven't had a lot of great parts being at my age. It's difficult to come by, but Didi is very interesting because Didi is a very young filmmaker. He's barely just turned 30, and he wrote a very personal story of his own coming of age, and he approached me for me to play his mother. It gave me an opportunity to sort of redeem myself as a mother, to become a mother again to a young person. It was a very cathartic experience for me, and so I didn't expect. It was a small film that's done in my area in Fremont, very, very near San Francisco. So for a summer, I could take my daughter there on the set and just have, it's almost like a summer vacation. But he turned out to be a great filmmaker that it's so worth my helping to be a part of his growth. We went to Sundance and we won the audience award and we won the ensemble cast. So it was, I saw you have photos up of Saving Face. Saving Face is the same. The Alice also was the first time director. At that time, she just left her tech work and wrote her own script, and it was a brilliant script. As Sean Wang, the person who directed Didi, also wrote a brilliant script. And so you read the script and you have faith in these young directors. I also love to work with young people because they bring me so much of that vitality, that energy, that need to sustain me at this stage of my career, to somehow break out of something that has been, that you fall into habits, or you become stale. And I love to work with young people.
Yeah, and then like in Sheep Without a Shepherd, you played a very aggressive person, and it's quite different. It's quite a different experience too, right?
Yeah. So that was, I had never played anything like it. I mean, she was vicious and fierce. There is always something in you that you didn't know you had. It was like, what? Oh, really? You see me as this character, but once I played it, and there was some parts that's so scary. I scared a very young kid. She almost peed in her pants, the actress. And later on, my husband saw it and said, "Oh yeah, I've seen that." I was like, "What?"
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, before we wrap up, we just wanted to ask you a little bit about Madame Song, because you met her when she played an Empress Dowager as a cameo role in The Last Emperor. So, did you have any recollections of what she was like, or what your impressions were?
I remember meeting her the first time. She was impeccably dressed, and she had I think a black dress on, hair pulled back, a signature. I remember noticing a necklace, some sort of either silk or rubber, I'm not sure, entirely black, but the end of it, there is either a big diamond or big piece of glass, extremely unique, something I've never seen. I didn't know a necklace could look like that. So stylish and so elegant. And I remember her, maybe that's the way she spoke English, always slow. She spoke slowly, very gracefully. I didn't realize then that the importance of her bringing to China a sense of fashion, a sense of Western fashion. And I remember Maxine, the restaurant, also was something I had never seen until that moment. Very Parisian, very ornate, and impeccably dressed, handsome model-like waiters, all men. And you feel like, oh, these waiters are much better dressed than I am. I wish I spent more time. We had a few meals there with Bernardo, with the other department heads. All the conversations there were interesting. I don't remember anything about the food, just remember the ambience. And I remember some of the dialogue, like Bernardo talking about the first time coming to China, how refreshing. At that time of his career, he felt somehow the politics in Italy was revolting to him, was disgusting to him. And a movie just fell through in Hollywood, and he came to China and just fell in love with that sense of innocence still there. We were very innocent. Then I went through the show yesterday, and I realized, she did bring a large piece of the European culture to China. Right at the moment China was just opening up. Yeah.
But you yourself, even, like as a parallel to Madame Sung, you're a true pioneer and an icon. So it's been said that Asian creatives are having their moment on the global stage. What do you think? Compared to when you were...
Yeah, when I first started in Hollywood, there was almost nothing. There was just nothing for us to play. The very first that I played, I don't even know how I got that part. I think I played a corpse. Was like, and the director said, well, she was raped and murdered, and we need you to take your clothes off. And I said, well, that I don't do. I was desperate, but I was not that desperate. And then the first kind of character that was alive was a Miss Taiwan, a Miss Taiwan in a old television show. People had to be really old to even have heard of it, called Simon and Simon, something like that. Anyway, so Miss Taiwan go from this side of the stage to that side of stage, walking with the banner on your qipao, and that was, high heels, qipao, and just walking through. That was my second character. My third character was in Hammer and Hammer. How come it's Simon? How come it's all like, I don't know. It's a show in which I play the Chinatown tea girl. And I came over to the lead character and I say, would you like to have some tea, Mr. Hammer? And for that speaking role, I got into the Actors Union. So then from then on, it started. All of that is after I won Best Actress in China. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So amazing.
But nowadays, truly, things have changed for Asians in Hollywood, for minorities in Hollywood. So any young people have ambition and dream, seize the moment.
And I think it means that you're going to be able to be so much more active as well, in the coming days.
I'm developing certain things on my own, and I still parts of like this age is still very rare. It's very rare. That's just the nature of the beast.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing so much about your work experience and your life with us. So now we're gonna read out some questions from the audience, and then you can have an exchange with them. So the first question we have here is, did you feel any responsibility as an Asian filmmaker when you're directing? Like, do you feel like you need to tell a story about Asia to the West?
I think I'm the kind of director. I'm not very good. What do you call it? Just selling your craft. Just get a script and just direct it. 1, 2, 3, 4 as a formula. I need to feel extremely deeply, and I need to be compelled to want to tell a story, to tell a story of something that I know very well. And you don't really get to choose your theme. Your theme actually has chosen you through your experiences. How you lived your life is what determine your themes, the things that the kind of narratives that you would like to tell, the stories that you would like to tell. So it's not a lot that I could choose. People will say, "Oh, what type of stories do you like? This one or that one?" It's when I read it, when I see it, when I experience it, I immediately recognize it because it connects with something deep within. It's your experience. It's always about your own experience. Even a sci-fi film, a fantasy fairy tale film, it's all autobiographical. It's who said that? Some writer, that the pearl is the oyster's autobiography. And that is what I'm going to make. I do not feel a responsibility for a particular race, for a particular political cause, or anything. That's not where art comes from. The art comes from deep within you.
Yeah. So the next question I see is, so does audience notice that there's a greater proportion of female audiences in sitting here today? And she just wanted to know whether you feel it's your own gender or whether it's your own personal qualities that make you very appealing to female audiences. Whether you even agree with that, it's up to you to say.
I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea. But I'm really glad to see so many girls, so many women here. I do feel that we have an affinity, that's a special affinity that we do not have possibly with the other gender. But first of all, though, we are all just human beings. So I have no idea. Yeah, anybody could tell me why.
Yeah, and here's another question, which is also about a female gender. It says, what do you think is the most important quality of a contemporary woman?
Again, I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea, because I think it's the same for men or women. It's the same. I think the two things that I feel it's important to me that I live with, the first one is humility. The second one is curiosity. And with these two things, I mean, with humility, you will see everybody. There's no definitely good or bad. There is this whole range of human beings, and you would be more accepting and more understanding, and part of you as that too. So to me, humility, and second is curiosity. That gives you the vitality, that gives you the opportunity to still have a growth curve. You always want to learn something new. I think if you lose that, then you're really old. You're done. Yeah, so these are the two things.
Right, and then someone wants to know, do you have any suggestions to people who want to become a filmmaker or director, but doesn't have any much experience or financial support? Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I think you have to be obsessed and stay obsessed. You have to then adjust your entire life in accordance with that obsession. It's easy for some people sometimes to say, well, I love acting, or I love to be a director, but there is a high price to pay, that you got to stay obsessed and undaunted, pay a price for it. I was sharing with some of our friends here yesterday that I just happened to chance upon a program on Netflix. It's a documentary about Sylvester Stallone. It's like a action movie star, and I thought to myself, I didn't give him enough credit, and so I talked about when he was young, how he wasn't castable, that nobody wanted to cast him because he had a paralyzed one side, that he talked with the little crooked mouth, and then it was cast in some small part as villains always. And he had the dream that he was a leading man. And how do you do that? And he was never cast as that. Then he found out that he had a knack for lines, that his life had taught him. He's had a rough upbringing. He's heard people talking on the streets and how real people talk. And he would then start to revise his lines as a villain, starting from there. But still, that wasn't his dream. He wanted to be a leading man. That's when he started writing the script of Rocky. He was at that time, he could hardly pay his rent. He was very poor. And finally, he finished writing Rocky. And the studios want to buy it. They want to buy the script. The script was good. And the script was offered to him that $500,000. That's $500,000. And he was poor. He couldn't pay his rent. And you know what he did? He said, no, I must star in it. And they say, you star in this? What are you talking about? They had stars in mind that could sell the film. And that's what this $500,000 is about. That you got to have the stars to sell the film. No, you can't star in it. Well, then I'm not selling it to you. And to have that kind of determination, to orient your entire life, to be willing to take that loss, to do it. And he did it. He did it. He did it time and again. We never thought of, Stallone as this type of inspiration, but to me, it was a great inspiration for all the young people. He started from nothing. And you just have to be undaunted and just with that one drive. Sometimes I feel like if this person says, I love acting, it has to be a love that you feel like, I can't live without it. That's love. Love means you can't live without it. And if you have that kind of a love, you will be an actor. You may not be a leading man. You may not, but you would be happy. You would be living then if you played a supporting role. And that you will do because you love it, and that will give you the pleasure. But it has to be that kind of a love.
There's a very interesting question here. It says, do you watch a TikTok or the short videos, and what do you think about them? Do you think they're going to make films and dramas die out?
Possible. It's very possible. No, I don't surf the TikTok, never, ever, but I do have friends who would send me sometimes, and they're interesting, some of them. Yeah, so they're curated by my friends that I could trust. I wouldn't be surfing looking for things, but I know that this might be the way of the future. And things do die out. Even the most beautiful things die out. Like dinosaurs die out. So there is a possibility, but I'm so happy, I'm so fortunate that not in my lifetime. I'm old enough to avoid it. Yep.
So there's a question here, but I think it's probably the question itself is saying, as an Asian working in Hollywood, what's your biggest challenge? But I think it's probably from your experience and talking about Stallone, it's like I think everyone have their challenges. It's not just being an Asian, but perhaps you can talk about your personal challenges.
I never blame it on the fact that I couldn't do something because of my race. It might be an extra challenge, but there is nothing you can change about it. That's how you're born. This is what you possess. And always see it as a positive. Always see it as your best asset. No, it's not your burden. It's your asset. Yeah.
Great. And so that might be a difficult question to answer, but someone said, which is the favorite character you've played? But I guess it's different at different stages in your life, right? What kind of character do you like playing? Let's put it that way, instead of talking about all the characters you've played. Or what character have you not played that you want to play?
I would like to think I haven't played her yet. I'd like to think that it's yet to come. You look for the kind of complexity that you feel you possess something that you would like to share to the world and you had never had the chance yet. And I do still feel that way. But the most fortunate two roles that I played, one is Little Flower, Xiaohua. The other one is The Last Emperor, because people loved them. For the Little Flower, amazingly enough, I started playing Little Flower when I was 17. And today, there are still people coming to me and calling me Little Flower. So that was very fortunate. Like, if I only played one part in my life, and that wasn't even that great a part, that would have been very satisfying already. I mean, people nowadays, they would come to me. I mean, people around my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, they would come to me and share with me, like, oh, under what circumstances they saw that film and how many times they saw that film. Back then, films were, I don't even know the word in English, 跑片. Okay, 跑片 means that a few villages would be showing this film, and along the way, there is this person either riding the bicycle or the ox cart or what have you. They would ship the reel, a film at 4 wheels, 5 wheels. They would ship the reel from one to the second place. So each place are waiting for the next village to deliver the next reel. And so sometimes that person was riding the bicycle not fast enough, and the first reel's done and the second reel's not there yet. Then people would take a little break, drink a little tea, and discuss the first row, and the second row would come, and they would continue. And they would share with me these experiences of which side of the sheet they were sitting at. I mean, they project a film onto a big piece of white sheet, and then people would sit in the front as well as in the back, and so some of them saw me backwards. And people still talk about it after 40-some years. One I will never forget is that there was these, like, maybe a dozen or more soldiers in a very remote station on the border in Tibet. And they seldom get to see films. At that time, Xiaohua won many awards, including the Best Picture. So they decided to, truck these films to the remote area for the soldiers to watch. They had no white sheet. They had no theater. They had nothing to show the film on. And the soldiers, they made a screen out of snow. They put all the snow together. They piled it up. They packed it with their shovels. So it's a snow wall where they showed the film. I was so moved. And so that was the one film. That's enough if I only did that film. For people to have seen it again and again. I mean, just imagine in the high plateaus a snow wall they made, and the winters are long. It's probably there for a very long time. The second, obviously, is The Last Emperor, because that's when I learned to actually love movie making as a craft. That has sustained me throughout my life. So these would be the two. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all your questions. They've been really great, and unfortunately we couldn't go through every one of them, but there's just like two more questions that are pretty much asking for the same thing. So I'm going to wrap with that question, because then it's something I also wanted to talk about too, and to find out more. So like, two of the audience here they're saying that they've been reading your writing that you've published in Shanghai in a publication called Shanghai Literature, and they think your writing is incredible. So first of all, they want to know whether how different it is for you to write and to act or direct, and then do you have any plans to publish more? So I actually know that you're going to launch a book. So please tell us more about that.
I started writing a column for the Shanghai Literature, that magazine, about a little over 2 years ago during the pandemic. And so after 2 years of serializing the writing, I am going to publish it, with rewriting into a book. So it is going to come out this year. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed writing, but once I started, I loved it. It's just another venue of sharing, another venue of self-expression. And I did realize that I love words. I love certain way of putting them together, and so I would say I love it as much as acting, and maybe more, because I am in full control. I am. It's almost like making a film on paper, that you don't need the money or the crew or the this and that. So I found a new love during the pandemic.
And these are like more your personal experiences and stories. And is there a title for the book yet?
The title of the book is actually, it'll take some explanation. We probably don't need I don't have the time. It is more personal, yes. It's somewhat of autobiographical essays, but I did dwell on my grandparents and even their grandparents to discover my own lineage. I've always thought, gosh, their lives are screen worthy. I mean, what they have been through. My grandparents, my parents, never a dull moment. They've gone through so many different wars or political movements, and so much change. and I do believe the personal history is an important part of history. So that's where I started from my forefathers. And also my own musing, my own upbringing, and what has made me the person that I am today. All the trials and tribulations, and I think at my age, I could afford to be a lot more honest, and which is then more enjoyable. That I don't have to worry as much.
Great. And so, we really look forward to seeing more of your work, reading your words, and seeing you on the screen, as well as seeing your contribution behind the screen as well. And thank you so much for coming and asking so many questions. And I hope you enjoy this talk. And and then we'll have a chance to take photos afterwards.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.